Welcome back. Cleaning of the panels is not difficult, but it is time consuming and difficult for the brain to comprehend. It's just so boring. But you'll get there. Just take your time. And maybe listen to some good music while you're doing it. We will mostly be dealing with old stators and old glue. This is reasonably easy to take off and generally just becomes very gummy or crumbly and just falls away, which is quite handy. Now when I say new glue, what I mean is a panel that I glued just a few years ago, and the polyurethane glue that I'm using becomes rock hard, and I'll deal with that later in this video. It's a lot more difficult to deal with. But first things first. On this one, once again, really gummy glue, comes off quite easily. Good. The stator is on quite firmly, so no need to take it off. As I say, I will place a few dabs of glue in a few corners just to make sure that it stays in place. You have to be careful scraping with a blade. You don't want to nick the plastic, as if at all possible. Just simply scrape the glue off. My next step will be to use some acetone to remove what's left. It's a long-winded business, but you just got to take your time until it's done. Try not to get the acetone on the stator. You don't want it dissolving that particular polyurethane. Okay. Hopefully you can see that it's coming off quite nicely. Actually, this is terrific actually. The new glue wouldn't come off with it, but this being very old and muggy, it's coming off really nicely. Right, and after that you rough it up. Rough it up with some steel wool or sandpaper. And wipe that off with more acetone. Beautiful. Hopefully you can see that's come up really nice and clean. Perfect. Do that to all of them. Take your time. But it's worth it when you hear them for the first time. You play some music through them. You go, ah, yes. As you can see, the groove I've got down the middle there The orange wire just fits in there neatly. This way my frame can sit nice and flat. Now this has old glue on it, and this is relatively easy to take off. Just comes away, which is good. Fairly tedious, but must be done. Finish off with a bit of acetone on a tissue or cloth and wipe it away. You can't be too fastidious when it comes to cleaning them up, getting rid of the old glue and anything that might get in the way of gluing the stators back properly and the diaphragm. Take as much care as you can. This is one of the diaphragms taken out of the black panel, and before I re-glue it I need to clean it up. So get a sharp bladed knife and just run across all the old bits of glue, scrape them off. The bits where it's been soldered, remove that solder with a solder sucker or solder wick so that it's nice and flat, so that when you re-glue the lump of solder won't get in the way. When you finish scraping it, clean it off with some acetone or alcohol of some description, just to make sure there's no impurities left on the surface as much as possible. Beautiful. Do the same on the fabric side. A little bit more care is required to not cut away too much at the fabric, but a few mistakes won't hurt. We're not after perfection, we're just after a really nice speaker. Nice. You do that all over. Yes, it's time consuming, but that's what needs to be done. Doing this requires a fairly new and sharp blade. Lots of little bits of glue come up through the pores. Possibly not essential to do this, but I like to do it to make sure that there's less risk of arcing across. The half panel with the silver tape down each side of the half diaphragm, half stator. It's a good idea to get some acetone and give it a bit of a wipe to get the glue off. Otherwise it will tend to stick to the mylar on the other half of the panel and perhaps cause problems down the road. Doesn't take long, it's easy to do, and well worth the effort, I feel. Right, this is one of the two I just showed, and it's a shame that I have to take the diaphragm off, but it's just too loose. Right, another one to add to my collection, number 20 I think. Now it's just a matter of scraping away all of the glue and what's left of the mylar around, getting back to the plastic. No easy way, just have to around and scrape it off until you're back to the bare plastic. The idea here is to remove all of the leftover mylar diaphragm, and then using sandpaper, wire brush, steel wool, anything that will work to rough up and smooth out the old new glue. The more recent new glue that I have here is actually very tough and rock solid. So my aim isn't to remove it completely, but to rough it up ready for the new glue that I'm using. I know that the new glue that I will be using is the same as this current new glue. So same chemistry, and but I don't have a choice. To remove it completely from the plastic frame is just too difficult. I'd have to wait 20 years for it to disintegrate, and I can't wait that long. Just do the best you can and make it nice and smooth, however rough enough for the new polyurethane glue to stick to it. If the glue had been a lot older, like some of my earlier 1994 panels, then this glue would be all crumbly and would be actually quite easy to come off. But because it's only been done 2 or 3 years ago, it's still very strong. So I'm better off just to make sure it's nice and flat and roughed up. The diaphragm is already secure from a previous repair. Without forcing it, I can press at many spots and it's still quite secure, so no need to re-glue the stator, which is good. It's sometimes patchy, glossy in the middle of the surround. That's because it's slightly concave shape, I think is the word, concave. And I think the idea is that you fill up the middle with glue and the diaphragm sits on the on either edge. But nonetheless, it's fairly small differences. With the steel wool and the acetone, this should be very close to where it was, and as I said before, the glue roughed up should mix with the new glue I use quite well, so I'm fairly confident that it will be fine. No other way really anyway. Right.